Okay, so this interview is about many of the things you were talking about the day of, and it doesn't so much matter if you can't remember. It's more... Did you ever do a body scan in any kind of...
Like in like yoga class.
Yeah, perfect. Any modality. That idea of going into memory and instead of just going to the narrative, the habitual one of the like, oh, there's my thoughts about what happened. Doing a body scan memory is the best way I can describe it, I think.
Sure.
The most, okay, so the things that I'm really interested in are, in particular, the descriptions of the sensations happening, especially when in contact with others, who in that case would be me. But that they weren't necessarily, or perhaps they were the same throughout the class. So moments.
I'm gonna get distracted. I'm gonna get distracted.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm going for moments. Yeah, maybe just starting there. So, I would propose in more concise language to scan through the class in any kind of, not necessarily memory body scan way, but just in any fashion you want, go through the class and then think about, are there moments that where you remember something strong sensationally happening? It doesn't have to be in relation to me, but maybe at least one, because we're mostly going to roll over like a video recorder back and forth.
Sure. Do you want me to do that without being reminded at all of what the sequence was, since it was a few weeks ago?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
To me.
Because I think that if I went through trying to remember, then I might. But maybe I'll just do it whatever comes first before going deep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just respond at a not think about it too hard, and then if not enough comes, then I'll think about it harder in terms of recall.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess the first thing that stood out to me when you said, like, what were sensations or, like, intense things, I think that I remember eye contact being difficult for me, and feeling kind of like a juxtaposition. I feel like I felt like relatively comfortable with the other modes of connecting, but then felt like, I think that I like felt a lot of like fear and insecurity with eye contact. I distinctly remember like that exercise being like, whoa, like that bringing up a lot of intense, like I was surprised at the level of discomfort that I felt.
Do you want to go into that one while it's there?
Sure. I guess the other thing I would say about it is I also think it's interesting that touching was easier. Because that's not, if someone were just to ask me, like, is it more comfortable to just like touch someone, or is it more comfortable to look at them in the eyes? I wouldn't assume that touching would be more comfortable, but it definitely was. And I'm trying to remember what the other thing was that we were, it was like either connect visually, connect physically, or I don't remember what the other one was.
I don't remember if I called it that day, but I started calling it abstract connection. In the way of, do you remember the one where we were doing the feeling the difference in the air? And that you can feel some sense of connection without touch or looking in the eyes. But I don't know what that is. So I just don't know abstract connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that thing also makes me think of the exercise that was like about like listening to where someone could be touched and or
Yeah.
moved towards. So I feel like that also brought up a lot of like, it's actually kind of interesting based on like the conversation that we were just having
Yeah.
about like like how much I like how much of a response is after like reading body language different ways, like interpreting how you could interpret body language in many different ways, and like how much the interpretation is coming from me and how much it is emanating from you, I guess, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a part that stuck out to me.
There was something that day that you said that was, I wonder if, it was about, about the cognition and interpretation. I'm trying to like paraphrase what I remember of what you're saying, but feel free to change the words into what is more fitting. But as I remember our conversation, it was something about you saying, oh yeah, there's these ideas I have of what this particular body language means, and then real specifically this moment where you were talking about, oh, and I have this thought that this thing should happen, but then I also feel like I should touch this part of your back.
Mm-hmm.
That there was a dissonance happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that moment is really, I don't know if it's interesting to you, but in
Yeah, I remember that too. I don't know what going into either eye contact or that is, but, or you mean just like diving into more of that?
yeah, so let's just take that one, or any one within there that you were just bringing up of saying, oh yeah, that section brought up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And from the way that I've been doing it, but feel free to improvise and make up your own way, to go through these layers of memory or various versions of memory to maybe like retell that portion, or also, and then go to a body scan memory or do a body scan memory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that part in particular, I would say like I think that you physically, you were like, your head was down and your shoulders were down, and you were kind of like looking at the ground and kind of like hunched over in a way that you were facing me, but you weren't looking at me and you were hunched over. So like in that way, I think a natural inclination would be like this person like doesn't want me to interact with them because they are not looking at me and they're kind of rolling up apart in a like fourth of a ball. But then I think like, you know, I was walked over to your side and then like noticed your back more, and I think that like in that process of trying to listen to you physically, like it felt like there was it felt like your back was kind of like sticking out, and or you were kind of like breathing from it in a way that was like shifting, and it was like moving a little bit in a way that like the rest of your body wasn't. So I feel like there was like a combination of movement and like breath that like signaled to me that that was like a place potentially to touch, and or that you might want to be touched, or might want to be
Mm-hmm.
that place in your body might want to be touched, less you even than like that place.
Mm-hmm.
For like maybe just physical discomfort, like I feel like it was like I was part of me that was kind of like, oh, maybe that part is uncomfortable. So like even though, so I guess in terms of like, I don't know if I'm just gonna like go off of it, I think there's like part of me that's sort of like, well, maybe this person doesn't want to interact on like a like verbal or social way, but like their body might be feeling pain or discomfort that they might want to be interacted with. Or maybe this is a place that just happens to be accessible in any number of ways.
And then pausing there for a moment and doing, I don't know if it's helpful to you or not to shut your eyes, but to do this body scan memory, coming back to the moment of, that I heard you say of kind of discovering my back, coming around and then seeing that there's this part of me. Mm-hmm. Do you remember anything about how the rest of you felt? Do you remember anything about the air quality, your skin, your muscle sensation, any vague, unclear sensation? What you could hear of my breath even? Any...
It's funny, I'm like, it's quiet in my mind, but it's loud all around me. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the things that I feel like the thing that I remember the most is that there felt like there was a lot of stillness, but there was movement, like there was movement in your back, and there was breath in your back. So I feel like in terms of like trying to listen to, because I think the direction was to find a place to like listen to how, like where you could approach someone or touch someone. And so I think at first, I guess it felt like there was like a lack of like air or space, or like I didn't feel a lot of anything, I guess, in response. And I remember like
in response to what?
Or not, I guess when you say like the air around, I think things felt very still. So it was hard for me. I remember being like, I don't know, I don't have a way to, I don't have something to connect to. And then I think that when, like I remember kind of like seeing your back move or like noticing the breath, and I do remember being like, oh, like I remember like having like a heightened response in myself. And then also I feel like that like recognizing the potential for there to be a connection to a place to connect, I think then heightened my senses, if that makes sense. So like I think I became more aware of like breath and even like the air in the space, like and like possibility, like by seeing that there would be potentially a way to connect, I guess.
And when you say you became more aware of the breath and the air in the space, in your own perception of your corporal self?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I think it heightened my senses for both myself physically in the space, but also it heightened, I think, my ability to see the nuance in you. Because I think that I feel like it was like, in a sense, it felt like it like gave me permission to look deeper. Like it was like, oh, I've got something, so like now I can see everything else a little bit more clearly. Or like maybe there's, and I think that with that, also like with the like invitation or possibility to look deeper, then like things like light and air and sensations became stronger.
Do you remember what the sensation at that time of the aha moment? Do you remember how did you know you were having an aha? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that I for some reason I actually think of being like having like a set, like there was like actually kind of like a sound in my head that was like
Yeah. This is really weird. Do you remember where in your head?
I think I would say if I was gonna like completely say, I would think that it probably started like vaguely in my sternum and then was stronger in the back of my throat up through the middle of my head and then was a little bit less towards the top of my head. So like, yeah, I would say from my sternum through the top of my head, but like most strongly in the middle.
And then the moment when you, because you went from...
And, I'm sorry, I'm just realizing, not a straight line.
Ooh, cool.
So, like, I think that definitely, like, a diagonal to a curve to another diagonal, kind of like a curve, like a, like a wiggly road sign.
Starting from the sternum going upward. Like the Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure.
I don't know if I know. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I know Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure, but I can't imagine the road sign. Not a super curly line, but like a this way, that way, this way line.
Okay.
And like it's very clear to me that the sound was curvy.
And then from that moment of the curvy sound going like sternum up to head sound aha-ness, then do you remember the next sensation that you felt in your own self, which could
I can really distracted by the TV.
Or even, I don't know if... Oh, go ahead.
I think that, like, if I was going to describe it physically, like, I think that there was, like, a lightness, and I think I even kind of, like, remember going up on my toes a little bit and having, like, a little bounce. Because I think it was, like, a question of looking... Like, I was looking for something, and then I found a potential... Found it, potentially. So I think then I, like, remember kind of like, the description of the sound then possibly being replicated physically with, like, an upward kind of bouncing, like, motion of, like a little bounce, and then I think, like, wanting to more deeply investigate. So I think there was, like, a excitement, and then, like, a physical representation of that, and then, like, a deeper investigation, and, like, a physically going more deep, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, actually, like, a physically heightened response of going up on my toes, and then, like, physically just, I mean, it sounds very simplistic, but, like, going down, like, possibly, like, bending my knees a little bit and, like, leaning in.
Yeah. Just for clarity, does it feel like that, or do you remember going down, lowering in that way.
I remember moving upwards and then looking down. Because I remember like making a sound, and then I remember looking at your back closer, physically closer, from different angles for a while before deciding what to do.
And then do you remember when, this is kind of like, if you say the moment of deciding what to do is sort of a pin and needle, and then there's the right before deciding, what did it feel like in that? If I could put it in this way, in a similar story as you just told of, you have an instruction or you're looking for something, and then you find an entry point. And the way I heard you just describing, looking at my back for a while before you figured out what to do next, rolling over that what to do next moment.
I mean, I think I actually did like practice.
Yeah, cool.
Like I think I put my hand I slowly put my hand over your back and see what that felt like, and like tried to notice whether there was any response to that, positively or negatively. I think I did that a few times actually.
Do you remember what any of those felt like?
I remember feeling like a combination of uncertainty and certainty. Which seems odd, but I think I was like a little bit. I think I was a little bit. Yeah, I think that I was like excited to try it, but also unsure if it was the right answer, and so felt like a little bit scared to try it. And I think even when I think I did that a couple of times, and I think I had like a back and forth with myself about it. And then I think even like when, I think I did eventually touch your back, and I think I was sort of like, remember kind of being like, okay, well I'm doing this because this is what I think I should do, but I'm still not totally sure I'm right. So that being like also a little bit like feeling good about having made a decision, but also like uncertain and a little scared about making the wrong decision.
And do you remember how the feelings of certainty or uncertainty manifested in yourself? Like what they felt like?
I mean, I think that the certainty felt like somewhat fluid and warm.
Do you remember?
And also rapid.
Yeah.
And the uncertainty felt like felt slower. And like more less what's the word I'm looking for? I guess just less smooth. Less fluid or less smooth, more jerky.
And for either or both of them, did they have a location?
In me?
Yeah.
Well, I was physically physically doing it with my hand, I guess. So it was like my hand was moving from, like my right hand, I would say it was moving from my shoulder, like holding it up like how I am now, I guess, like flat out, was probably like the starting point, and then I like would move it slowly out over the middle of your back and like hold it above it. So I guess like a lot of that part of it was just happening with between my elbow and my hand in terms of like movement over your back, but in terms of like the rest of my body,
you're like, where did the sensation of...
It's interesting. I think also from my sternum up. I don't remember my lower body. I don't really remember below my sternum being involved in it at all.
Yeah.
So like I feel like it's kind of a similar thing. Like it felt like kind of beginning to be grounded in like the questioning and like yes or no responses that I was getting, to be simplistic, like were like beginning in my sternum and then kind of going up and down between, like through my throat and up to like the middle of my head, I would say. And back down again.
Oh, so, and then this kind of rapid, was it going up and down in that tempo?
Well, actually, I would say maybe it wasn't going up and down. Like, it was going, like, I think it was kind of moving around, but, like, between my sternum and not quite the top part of my head, but about where, like, above my eyes, I would say. Like, it would be, like, more, it would be stronger or less strong anywhere in between there, and shifting, I would say. So, but not necessarily like a up and down like an elevator, like more like banging around like a ping pong ball.
And then the last kind of question for that I have in terms of this location question.
I'm sorry, I just going to remedy that. Not with the rapidness of a ping pong ball, much slower than that. Yes. Sorry, what were we saying?
Oh no, it's great. I was wondering if it was happening so there's this from sternum to head area, and then there's also what kind of like an oblong tube or something, a squished tube. That there's front or back or degrees from the middle, or whatever the middle of you is. And I'm wondering if you take your spinal column, say, like, just as a reference point, inside of you, was the sensation happening irrelevant of that, or in front of that, or behind that, or to the side? The ping pong up and down, this slower than ping pong kind of motion. Was it right in the center or somewhere else?
I would say it was moving most specifically like side to side. Like, and maybe sometimes to like sometimes a relatively large jump. So like if we are talking about, and I think that I've mostly been thinking about it being like my sternum as being up here, but I would say that they're like right below my
the very bottom of the
the very bottom of the sternum. Like I think it probably, like when I think about it more, I think about it actually like maybe also involving this part. But maybe being like somewhat more aware of it up here, but it's sometimes emanating from down here. And so like I think that like, can I just draw it? Do you want me to verbally? I'm gonna draw it with my hand, but then I would like verbally say it. Like I would say that it kind of shifted like a little bit like this.
Okay. Yeah.
And then like maybe actually for some reason I'm imagining it like swirling around. So like kind of like ping ponging, like if I was starting like below my, like I don't know if that's like a breast plate or what that is.
Yeah.
Like that it would like potentially move like up to my shoulder and then over to the other side of my neck, and then
seeing like a spider web when you move your hand like
that. And like maybe back down again, and then maybe up, and then maybe swirling around my face area a little bit, and then going back down again. So like, because I mean it's hard. I feel like I just think about it in nonverbal. Like I just remember kind of being like, you know. So I feel like that, like the noises aligned with the sensation of where I feel like it physically was. Like the noises that were not external but internal.
And this is for to re-clarify for myself, this is the sensation was happening in relation to the certainty and uncertainty, or one or the other?
I was thinking both, actually.
Cool, okay.
But I think the movement was stronger for the uncertainty. Like, I think that the, like, I don't know, I guess just that the same thing that I said before, that the certainty felt much more fluid and calm. And it shifted, but it was, like, it still moved, but it moved with more ease, I would say. And the uncertainty was more like ping-pongy.
And then this word you said, strong. Can you describe what kind of strong a little bit more?
I don't remember what I was referring to.
Okay. I think it was in the, if I remember right, the uncertainty having a stronger, that the movement was in the uncertainty was stronger. Like I understood it to be more forceful or something.
I think it was just more I don't know if strong is actually the word. I think it was. It felt more violent. I guess that's kind of a strong word.
Yeah.
But it felt like more like the certainty had more of like a yeah. I guess if I was like describing it in visuals, it was like the uncertainty felt like faster and more jolting, and so like therefore felt stronger in like intensity, or in like if I was gonna throw a ball across the room, it would be like, you know, like gently tossing it, or like versus like throwing it really fast against the wall.
And then, as I understood, you were saying then even so that was happening when the touch landed. So this simultaneity of certainty and uncertainty was continuing together.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened?
You mean when the actual touch happened?
Oh, well, it did. Oh, yeah. Did it shift when the actual touch happened? I thought I misunderstood.
I think actually it was like a combination of, like, if I would describe how it felt, it was like a combination of, like, sort of like a still resolve that felt like warm, but also like a little shaky. Or.
And this is when the actual touch happened?
Yeah, because I feel like there was still like an anxiety.
Yeah.
Like I think there was still like a feeling, like I still felt anxiety about it being correct or incorrect.
Yeah.
And so like I remember there being like, if I was going to describe like the feeling, it would be like a warm circle, like surrounded by like tingling.
And again, in terms of location?
Well, like when I guess when I was envisioning that, I was actually envisioning my hand, but I also think, like, I feel like my hand was sort of like a metaphor for, like, kind of the same area that I described, but like a broader kind of like oval that encompassed like my chest up, like across, like a large, kind of almost like the large oval mirror. Like I think that was, I was feeling that feeling throughout that part of my body, and my hand was like the symbolic thing that connected to that rest of my body.
And then just to clarify, when you started drawing on your chest, I got kind of lost or taken away with the pattern being produced by your finger, of the sensation going up. And I can't remember, is it in terms of both this warm circular with tingly and also the movement as described before? When you're saying side to side, does it, it's like I'm curious about depth. Because I'm not sure how to ask this.
Depth in terms of like in front of or like behind or in front of my spine?
Yeah, or even extending out in the way that sometimes you can feel things outside of your skin or the...
Well, I think one thing that I definitely noticed is that the description of decision, like the decision versus the, like, deciding, like, is this right or is this not right, felt more isolated, I would say, or like felt less like when the description of like being like if this is your back, like basically being like trying out, like, does this feel right or does this not feel right, like feels more disjointed. Like it feels like when I'm remembering it as like, but the actual decision to like put my hand on your back feels more like it's encompassing and connecting the rest of my body.
More tissue or more cell. Okay.
So like feeling it like as connected, like my yeah.
So to be, I find moderately annoying myself in continuing to ask.
And emanating further, I would say.
And
does
so
that make sense?
The emanating further absolutely makes sense, and is absolutely what I'm speaking to. I'm wondering, emanating further from where and to how far?
I think that the the process of when I think of like the decision making of like making a decision to put the hand on the back, I think of it emanating like from pretty far, like in terms of like out to for some reason I imagine like an oval shape, and I imagine it being like a few feet away from my body on either side and above my head. So like
Fascinating. Yeah.
like about 1.5 feet, I would say.
Outside of your skin.
Outside of me, yes, in an oval. So like 1.5 foot above me and to the sides in an oval shape.
And you felt that as soon as is this correct, when you came into the touch? And
I think once I had made a decision and
do you remember the decision?
decided to put my hand there, then I felt
Preceded the touch?
Interesting that you brought with one.
If you remember. If you don't remember, it's okay. Just please.
Yes. I think I was very, very close.
Yeah.
And then I decided that I was gonna do it, and then I did it, and then I like wasn't gonna go, then I wasn't going back.
And
then I think after that the feeling became broader.
Yeah.
So like I think that the maybe not a full foot or full 1.5 feet. Like I think the way that I just described it sounds like an angelic, like perfect rounded halo or something, and I feel like it was more slouched than that. Like a less imperfect oval. Because I think that there was still like that the uncertainty of that choice, like I think didn't lend itself to being like a perfect angelic oval.
Right.
But I think it was more of like a so I guess I would kind of imagine it as being like the process of the decision being like, okay, I'm gonna do this, okay, I'm doing it, and then kind of like a warmth and commitment that like penetrated outwards, and then I would say that it probably like shrunk in a little bit after moving outwards.
And then both narratively and sensation-wise, what happened then?
I think I more that I think about it, the more I think that I like once I did it, I felt like I had to ground myself. So like I feel like I remember grounding my feet.
How do you ground?
Which as that I feel like previous to that I don't remember my feet being very involved. Like I think I stood up a little bit taller, like through my spine, and like I think that like with deciding to being like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and like deciding to put my hand on your back, I feel like then I felt like energy shifted down through my feet while at the same time emanating out, but like it felt almost like I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this, then I have to be like ready for the consequences or like the response. And so like I feel like I felt that physically. Like I was like, okay, like I remember there being Yeah, like sort of like from the sensation of things being in my sternum at that point, like being like, okay, well now this feeling's gonna move like down through the middle of my body and like down through my legs and like through my feet into the floor.
Mm-hmm. And it did do that? Or,
yeah.
Okay.
Like I would say that the sensation was I guess I would say those things were simultaneous.
Which things?
The feeling of like, am I gonna do this? Am I not gonna do this? Like, okay, I am gonna do this. Like, the sensation, maybe it first started through my sternum and then went down through down before it went up, but I think they happened like relatively simultaneously. But like the down may have started a little bit before the up.
And then from there?
I feel like I think of it as being like, of that particular moment of decision as being, and like the moment right after it being a relatively strong feeling and it like being all encompassing in my body, but then I think right after that I feel like I'm remembering it kind of like coming into my shoulders, like the uncertainty part of it. So like like a little bit of like okay, like grounding myself like through my body, like feeling kind of like strong, and then also feeling like possibly after that maybe like rounding my shoulders and maybe slumping to one side a little bit. Which felt like which in my mind is like the confidence of making a decision and then like the lack of confidence to like stand by that decision kind of.
And then how did the shoulders and the slumping to the side, what characteristics about them led you to the understanding that they were part of this self-doubt or lack of confidence?
I just remember those feelings coinciding, or like the physical part and the feeling coinciding.
Yeah, I guess. Do you know what the feeling feels like?
Curled.
I
think.
Tight.
I feel like it feels like it comes from more of like the pit of my stomach.
Is there tension in the curl, or is it a soft curl?
It feels kind of like a deformed curl, like a not super extreme, but like, for some reason I'm having like the vision of it being kind of like concave and a little bit like crumbly.
Like in the way that a human nail from their finger can get crumbly at the ends, like that kind of crumbly. Or
I think like almost kind of like a coral reef, or like a cave that has a lot of holes. Does that make sense?
So yeah,
Like a
There's a lot of holes. Is that in the crumbling? Is that right?
like for some reason when I envision is like kind of like a clay, like hard clay, but that is in like a I don't know exactly how to explain it.
It's okay.
Like as if twigs were curled up but made of hard clay.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or for a second, I'm just trying to remember the sensation. I had like the sensation for a second and then I lost it.
The shoulder something.
Like I feel like it kind of is like getting like the wind knocked out of you. Like it feels like there's like a lack of breath to it and a little bit of like a immediacy, like getting the wind kicked out of you.
From coming from that spot, that.
Yeah, I think like general stomach area, like just maybe a little bit higher up, like below the other area I was talking about.
Right below where the sternum meets, but just like a finger below that.
Like in here. Like before, I think I was talking about like just below where my breast is, and it's like a little bit below that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like a lack of like losing breath and losing balance and feeling like like curled and crumbled and like out like unaligned. I would say like out of alignment.
And then do you remember what happened after that moment of feeling?
I think there was like a little bit of a stillness and like sitting in it for a little while. So like I think that there was like sitting, and I feel like those feelings, like I feel like the feeling of like I made a decision, like warmth, like grounding myself for like the repercussions of that decision, and then having like that kind of like euphoria deformed by anxiety to a certain extent. Like I feel like there was a moment of sitting in stillness with that juxtaposition of like both openness and like both the description of what I said between of like there being like it emanating like an oval outwardly and being connected to my whole body, and then also being like physically deformed and hollowed. Like I think that I remember there being like a moment of both of those things existing simultaneously. And then and not like unharmoniously, I would say. Like it didn't feel like they were warring with each other, it just felt like they were. And if I was gonna like describe that physically, I think it would feel like my shoulders and arms and like for or where I'm kind of like feeling the deformity the most, and I feel like the like right side of my like or like in particular my left shoulder, I would say, and I feel like my like the places where I felt it, like for some reason the like upper part of like above my shoulder to like the and up above my like head to the right, it felt like more like the you've made the right decision open feeling. So like I feel like my like yeah, for some reason I feel like my thighs and the like right side of my sternum and like just above that are like what felt like it stayed like open and or positive to the connection of that original feeling. And my like shoulders and arms, and in particularly left shoulder, and then like pit of my stomach are what were more connected to the anxiety of whether I made the right decision.
And then do you remember the next moment?
I think at the next moment, I think you broke away from me, and then were like nodded your head, or like you were kind of like, okay, like we're done with that, or like we're done, kind of a thing. And I think I was relieved, and like felt physically relieved. And I think that I think I was sort of like, okay, I think maybe I made the right decision. Like, but I'm still not sure. But I remember you like I think that like in you kind of like breaking like the moment of like you coming out of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Like coming out of the stillness. I think that there was like a little bit of like heightened fear in my stomach about what was gonna happen. And then I think you kind of like shifted and like nodded and like had like I remember you having like a not negative look on your face. And so like not overly positive either, but just I think I was sort of like so I think I kind of remember having like a feeling like a combination of like fear and relief when you moved, and then being like feeling a feeling of being like, okay, that wasn't so bad, kind of that. And I feel like that feeling I remember being like mostly in my stomach.
The relief.
For some reason the fear and the relief.
How do you know which is which, or how could you describe them?
I think that the fear to me felt like holding my breath and like felt like an upward motion in my like this area. I actually don't really. Stomach is always such a weird word.
Yeah.
So like this area, not my
the
pelvis.
upper.
You know what I mean? But like above my belly button, like below my sternum. So like that's mostly where I feel it, and like the like fear feels like an upward motion and feels like a lack of breath, and relief feels like a downward motion and like a release of breath.
And do you know to how far up the upward motion carried the sensation? Like, did it stay there, but it just felt upward, or did it also go further?
I think it did go further, but the majority of it, I feel like, felt isolated to my stomach. I feel like it moved possibly like for some. I'm imagining going somewhat like up the sides of my body into my shoulders, up through my shoulders. Yeah. And so I think it was strongest in that part of my stomach, but then up through the sides of my body into my shoulders for somewhat.
And when you say the sides of your body, did you feel it in the front and the back, or I'm not sure how to ask what I'm asking.
I feel like the front sides of my body.
Okay.
Into the like top middle of my shoulders.
Okay. And then similarly with the relief and the did you say downwardness of that? And breath. Was that on the front side of you also, or did you feel it in the back of you? Was it a circumference, or was it
Actually, I think of it as like now that I think about it, like the first part of it of fear more, like felt, and like the internal part of it felt like breathing upwards into like kind of like a balloon, like that my like I think of it actually encompassing like this whole section, like the front of my stomach and the sides of my stomach, and then I think that like the downward motion felt more like it was like in the middle and like down through my like through my pelvis and my private parts.
And frontally?
And frontally.
This is interesting to me because I've never heard anybody.
I don't think about it. Yeah. Not in a sexual way.
Yeah.
In like a releasing, like just like a whoosh through the, not necessarily like through. I don't think I felt a sensation like through my vagina. Like I don't think I felt a sensation of something like coming through me internally. I just felt like as if like there was like a bucket of water, and the bucket of water was released from between my legs, but not from between my. Not from my vagina. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense to me, actually. I think that the way that I found to describe this is that I feel like, so we just talked for a while about maybe 2 minutes of time. That there's this giant forest, and I feel like that I'm like, okay, that feels like a full basket. For me. But also, if there's anything else that you want to speak to or add to this, or it's just some other thing that you want to note that feels. Because this is very much an experiment, what I'm doing.
I mean, it's interesting for me to, like, it's interesting to think about what parts of my body are involved in what. That part is interesting for me in terms of being like, oh, my, like all of this decision making didn't involve anything below my sternum. That's kind of interesting. But then, like, also, like, another sensation being like, or like or another thing being super isolated in a particular part of my body. Like I think it was like, yeah, I think that like is just, it was interesting for me to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also like the texture of things is interesting for me to think about. Because they're like, like there are very, very distinct visual affiliations with some of the things that I don't think I would like think of if I wasn't paying attention.
Wait, will you say that sentence one more time? I'm sorry.
Like I don't think I would, like the sensation of the anxiety of fear was very, the like visual of that was like super strong for me. Like the like hard clay with holes in it kind of like thing was like very strong.
Yes.
The visual. But I haven't ever imagined that visual before.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
no,
it was interesting.
If the awareness meant right now or in the moment of that time.
Well, no, I haven't ever visualized like fear or anxiety with that particular visualization, but in describing it, the visualization was super strong.
Yeah.
So it was just interesting
to
me to be kind of like, that's like very specific. I don't know, I think sometimes I think that there is like, it brings up for me a little bit of like what is memory, like in terms of like how you want to remember something versus like how it actually happened. And so I think that like I was like aware of being like, is that actually how it felt, or am I like playing into like enjoying the sensation of this idea of how I think it felt?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
do.
so like that came up a lot, and I think also like wanting to be honest about like the feeling, but also be like, I feel like I also sometimes was like sometimes like an authentic like what authentically I felt came to me very quickly, and sometimes it didn't. Like sometimes I was like drawing a little bit of a blank and trying to remember. And I think at the times that I was like I could sense the times that I was like could feel the memory less, like felt like there was kind of almost more simplicity to it in a way that I was like, is that really how I felt, or is that just the simplistic my memory's simplistic interpretation of a positive versus a negative feeling? Does that make sense?
Can you, because this is a real point of interest for me, the way I'm coming at it is memory, but I'm really curious about what feels authentic. I have this experience in my life where some things feel when you said this is like an authentic memory or something similar to this, I feel like I know what you mean. And my question is, what are the qualities that make something feel authentic?
Well, I feel like there's like an aspect that doesn't feel constructed to me. Like it feels more visceral, and it feels less like there is a I'm totally just I'm thinking out loud here.
Great.
But like I feel like there is a sense, usually authenticity I think feels more visceral to me. It involves less thought. Usually it involves less thought and more feeling for me, I think. And I think that there is a tendency, I think maybe as somebody that overthinks things a lot too, and I don't think, I don't mean overthink in terms of like thinking deeply or intellectually. I mean like overthinking like taking a thing and being like, is this right or is this right or is this right? Do you know what I mean? Like that, I think that the longer I don't know, maybe this is a total judgment, but I think a lot of the time the longer I play with an idea, like I question what is right, the less authentic it becomes. Yeah, I mean, I guess mostly it's more things that are more intuitive feel more authentic to me. The things that I have to think about less or like grapple with less. I don't know if I actually agree with what I just said.
Cool.
But I mean, in terms of like I think I agree with it in terms of describing sensation and feeling. But then I think about like, I guess now I'm thinking about what that means in regards to like a much broader interpretation of authenticity. Because like if you're thinking about like I don't like, is a simplistic response to something in the world always like your first visceral response to something always authentic? Like,
doesn't mean it's true, or I don't know. Like, what does authentic mean to you?
Right. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if I was trying to honestly answer the question, but I don't know if I totally agree with my answer.
Yeah. I think I follow you.
But I do feel like that is the sense. Like I feel like there's a connection for me with it. It's like I'm not trying to. In my response, I am not trying to do anything. Like I'm not trying to give you the right answer. I'm not trying to please you. I'm not trying to like give an interesting answer. I'm not trying to give the correct answer. I'm just saying what I think is the most accurate, regardless of judgment. I think that's usually what feels the most authentic to me. Is speaking from a place of like honesty and not without there being like a judgmental influence from me or you, I guess. But also maybe trying to honor the complexity of something at the same time. Because I feel like I could choose to
in the way that you look deeper versus just going with here's red, there you go, there's a...
Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of like an authentic response involving like there being the willingness to explore something or to dive into something is part of that. I would say. I think. Yeah.
Do you feel like you, I mean, I heard you express some of this, so it's, when I asked this question, it's having heard you say what you said, and in addition, did it kind of give you more insight into how you, I don't know, yourself in any way?
Just going through that whole process?
Yeah, just curious. It doesn't need to, I just am curious what it's like for people.
Yeah, I think it did. I think like it makes me think a lot about I don't know, a part of me feels like I'm like judging myself for giving over simplistic responses, but fuck it, is like I think that like in particular thinking about like the positive feeling of like making a choice and like grounding yourself in it and then being like deformed by your anxiety at the possibility that you have failed to make the correct choice. Like I think that that's pretty intense and accurate in terms of just in terms of like thinking about sort of like what are the positive physical and spiritual potential effects of like grounding yourself in your decisions as opposed to like the potential negative physical or spiritual effects of like constant self-doubt and indecision. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like there's seems like kind of obvious, but I think that like actually talking about it in those concrete terms makes it more like embodied, I guess, as knowledge. Or maybe that's a funny way to put it, but
makes sense to me.
Or just like to be kind of like, oh yeah, God, I should probably try not to do that if that's how that makes me feel. Or like, you know what I mean? Like, or just be like, oh, that's not useful to me to be like off kilter and crumbly.
Do not want to be.
Or just to like, to notice that. I think that like also though like recognizing, like talking about the stillness of sitting with those things. I think that I have been trying to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that I have been doing a better job at it. I don't think I do a great job at it, but I think I do a better job than I used to at it. And I'm trying to continue to push myself to like grow little by little in that direction of being able to like sit more in the, you know, in discomfort and in like the, to be still with both the negative and positive simultaneously. Because I think that when I was younger, I had a really hard time feeling negative feelings and would just want to like not push them away and not sit with them. And so I think that resonated for me in terms of like just the fact, just acknowledging being kind of like, oh, and then there was this stillness where I very strongly felt both of these things was interesting to me. Because I was like, oh, like how often do I actually do that? Like, I mean, I do it all the time to a certain extent because I'm like living my life and like also doing a bunch of other things that I would rather not be doing to survive. Do you know what I mean? So like I think I actually sit in that complexity a lot, as most humans do, but like I think like, or like being able to recognize that point of like I don't know, that felt like, I feel like I felt kind of like proud of myself. Or I was like, oh good, like, or like sort of like, let's remember that, or like, let's remember that it's like, that you have done that.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. I think also just like listening in general is like I don't know, to be like totally, well, whatever. I think that it is something that I value a lot and think is really important, but that I don't actually think that I'm that good at. And so I think that like, or that I desire to be better at. Like I don't think I'm terrible at it, but I would like to be better at it. And I think that I feel like I know people that are better at it, that I respect and can see. And so I feel like I feel like I enjoy that activity, like just the activity of like listening to someone and trying to like listen deeply to someone non-verbally or otherwise and like see their response is something that I feel like is important for me to practice. And so like I remember when we did that being like oh good, this is good for me. Like this is like being like very aware that it was like good for me to do. Mm-hmm. And like also that it's kind of like a funny thing because it's like in some ways like it's not something that you're like invited to do that much, but that like you can be practicing all of the time, right? Like you're a human, there's other humans around, so like I feel like in some ways I'm like, well, I could be practicing this all like, but there's not usually like a clear space where you're invited to like do that actively. Mm-hmm. And so that just stood out to me.
Yeah.
Of being like, oh, this is like, I guess I just kind of had the thought of being like, this is like a good important thing to do that Erin's doing that I appreciate and like feel like is good for me and that I need to do more, but like where is the place that this is done? Not here. Do you know what I mean?
I only know of it in a couple spots.
Yeah. I mean, other than just reminding yourself to do it in your life, but I think it's like really easy to forget to do it.
Yeah.